Hello and welcome. My name is Terry White, Worldwide Photography Evangelist here at Adobe, and it's my pleasure to take you through what's new in the June 2022 photography releases. That's right, we got new features in Lightroom on desktop, Lightroom on mobile, and Lightroom Classic also on desktop. So I'm going to take you through them pretty much in that order. Now, of course, there's overlap. There are things that work across all three platforms, or things that work across only one or two. So I'll try and call those out as we can. But for the most part, I'll pretty much tell you, like, if it's a new feature just in Lightroom Desktop, maybe it already existed in Lightroom Classic. I can think of one example of that. But otherwise, you can pretty much expect what I show in one. I'm not going to waste time showing it in the other one because it's the same. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and switch over to my desktop since I've only got a few minutes with you today. And I'm running Lightroom desktop right now. Like I said, that'd be up first. I put together an album that I've synced to the cloud, and that album contains all the images that we're going to need today, images and video. And that same album, of course, is on mobile, and it is also on Lightroom Classic. So you'll see the same images. That way I won't have to worry about looking for images as I go. So the very first thing we're going to talk about is a new preset amount slider. You might remember for profiles. So for example, let's go ahead and grab an image here, and let's go to edit that image. And you might remember, hey, you have these artistic profiles you can use. So let's say I go browse an artistic profile here. Let's go browse. Let's get out of Camera Raw. Let's get down to some of these cool ones here. Let's say I like that denim look. Well, you remember profiles have an amount. So if that was too much, which it is, I could pull down the amount of that profile. Well, that's the way profiles have pretty much worked since day one. But you also now have this capability with presets for the first time. So for example, if I click on a preset, and let's go ahead and twirl this up. For example, I can go to my deep skin premium presets, which she has deep skin, so that works out great. And for example, maybe I like this PD02 yellow. But when I click on it now, I get a new amount slider for the preset, just like I had with profiles. So if that's too much yellow, I can pull it back. If it's not enough, I can crank it up. Depends on what kind of look I'm trying to go for, and also, of course, what the preset is set to do. So actually, toning it down gives me more of the original yellow dress. This is like it's almost overpowering the yellow in the dress when I go too much. But that's cool that we have these sliders now where you can go in and choose how much you want. Let's maybe pick a different color. Let's go with this orange one. Now notice this orange one has a vignette applied with the preset as well. So just as you would expect, if I crank up the slider, I'm also cranking up the amount of vignette. So that's one of the things to watch out for, is it's not just a specific slider that amount adjusts, it adjusts the overall preset. So if the preset has adjustments in it, things that can be slid one way or the other, then this adjustment slider, this amount slider I should call it, is going to adjust the amounts of everything that was defined in that preset, including things like a vignette. So I'm glad I stumbled upon that one to show you the difference there. All right, so let's bounce out of this. So presets have an amount slider, which is great. Now, my next, and this is probably going to be my favorite and most used new feature in presets, and that is the new adaptive presets, AI presets across different images. Now, you may remember for masking, last year we made a big release that gave us masking 2.0 that allowed us to do select sky and select subject. This changed the world in terms of the way we use Lightroom to edit local edits in an image, to only do parts of an image, because now you can quickly mask a sky or quickly have it select the subject and invert that mask and do the opposite. So all kinds of use cases there. But one of the things you couldn't do is you couldn't apply that masking to a preset. So like I couldn't say, I want select sky, and then no matter what the image is, when you select the sky, do these things to it. Now you can. So for example, if I were to go in to this first image here, and I were to go into the presets, as a matter of fact, we have a new category. We have two new categories under Premium. We have the Adaptive Sky and Adaptive Subject. So let's go to Adaptive Sky, and let's say, and by the way, it's pretty cool that as I hover over these, it quickly did a select sky in the background and saying, okay, I'll let you preview these now because I know what the sky is in this particular image. So let's say I like the dark drama preset. I can now go in and I could, for example, adjust the amount of that dark, that dark drama. There we go. Actually, blue drama might be better. Dark drama. No, I like dark drama. Okay, dark drama adjusted. There we go. It just wasn't taking that first time. All right, so now I've got dark drama adjusted. And now let's say I adjusted it to 147 and for the amount. And let's go in and go to our next image, which doesn't have that preset applied to it at all. But if I go to Adaptive Sky and I go to dark drama and I click on it and I change the amount, it is a totally different image pointing in a totally different direction, but I'm able to apply the exact same preset. It adjusts the sky accordingly to this image, and I can even adjust the exact same amount, which would be too much for this image, but I could if I needed to. So the point is if you have 50 images, 100 images, 1,000 images that are all different skies, you can now create a preset that incorporates select sky, and it will let you go in and apply that to all the images, the skies in all those images that are different. So again, and you have the amount slider, so maybe what might be too much for one sky and not enough for another, you can go in now and adjust that. I don't know why Blue Drama continues to want to give me that Neon Tropics preview. But anyway, there we go. All right, so I got it back, and let's go ahead and jump out of this now. So adaptive presets for sky. What about people? So for example, let's select a portrait. Let's go edit that. Let's go to presets, and let's get out of adaptive sky, and let's go to adaptive subject. So once again, as soon as I hover over it, it figured out what the subject was in the background that quickly. And now as I hover over each one of these, I like pop, it applies the pop to the subject, not the rest of the image, not the background, not the building, not the lights, so forth and so on. And of course, since it's a preset, it has an amount slider as well. So pretty cool to be able to do this quickly and easily using adaptive presets for subject and for sky. All right, next up, this one's kind of very useful, and this is one of those features that already existed in Lightroom Classic, but has now made its way over to Lightroom. So for example, we typically, when we shoot, or photograph a subject, we typically have 10, 20, 50, 100, 1,000 images from that shoot. And so a lot of times you're trying to figure out which the best one. So now we brought compare mode from Lightroom Classic over to Lightroom Desktop so that you can compare two images and narrow down to your favorite. So for example, let's say, actually let's grab these first two, this one and this one. And let's go to Option or Alt-C. They'll take me into Compare. You can also get to it from the menu. You can get to it from the View menu. There's Compare. But anyway, now that I'm here, I can see the image on the left, which is the candidate, and the image on the right, which is the one I'm thinking of so far. So if I pick a different candidate, it just swaps the one out on the left. So that way, and maybe I say, oh, I kind of like this one as my new favorite so far. Then I can go ahead and swap them so that now that remains the favorite, and I can keep swapping out different possibilities or other images until I pick one that I really like. All right, so that is compare, and of course you can look at them side by side, left and right. You look at them top down, which might be great for panoramas or wide images, but for portraits I'll prefer the vertical. And just that easily, if you want to get back out of compare, just hit the letter G to get back to the grid, or any other view will take you out of it. But just remember, when you were in compare, you had two images selected, you still have two images selected. All right, next up, and this is kind of a throwback. This is going to be one for people that you probably don't run into this too often today, but you might have some older images that have this issue. And you'll notice that if I zoom in, I held down my command key, by the way, so I can do a custom zoom. But you'll notice that if we zoom in, you see a problem you might not have seen in a while, but it certainly used to be a problem. It used to be a big problem, especially if you were using a point and shoot camera or any camera really, with a flash directly on top of it caused this issue. Now, some of the camera manufacturers got smarter and made the flash blink so that it would reduce the red eye. But if you have images that have red eye, now you no longer have to manually go in and fix them one by one. You can actually go to the healing brush, and now there's a new red eye tool, but with that red eye tool is the autocorrect. So there's 4 eyes in this image, 2 sets of eyes. If I just hit autocorrect, it fixes all of them at the same time. Great for group shots. Great for shots that like this, where you have multiple people that have the red eye issue. Now, you might say, well, what color did it make the eyes? Well, it doesn't know what color the eyes used to be. You can still go in and manually do that if you want to change the color of the eyes. But you'd have to do that like in Photoshop to get it. Or you could do it in Lightroom if you make a masking adjustment using the ellipse tool or the elliptical masking. So you can go in and do that. And of course, what if it missed it? What if the AI did not grab all the eyes? Like, for example, I had another shot where it got 3 out of 4. So this is still a tool. So if it didn't get all 4 eyes, you can go in and manually click on the eye that it didn't get to apply it to that eye. So if it missed any, maybe the head was turned and it just didn't see it right, you can go ahead and apply it manually. So that is the auto red eye reduction. Next up, let's go into community. Let's go back into Discover. Actually, let's get out here. Let's go there. Let's go grid. Let's go all the way back up to Discover, the Discover panel. And the Discover panel is kind of like your photography social media timeline. So it shows people that you follow. It shows following. So for example, I can just click on following to get to images of people that I care about, people I follow. It also shows me the For You, so basically daily inspiration for images that it thinks I like based on other images I might have liked, or the images I kind of uploaded myself. Anyway, one of the things that was always kind of a drag about this is that you couldn't find a specific photographer you were looking for. So for example, if you were looking for me, you'd have to kind of scroll around or find one of my images. But now you can actually go in, and if I can get my keyboard to work. Oh no, is my keyboard? Hang on. It's not the keyboard. What's going on here? Well, imagine if you could type. I'm not sure what's... the keyboard's I know what it is. Keyboard is working for the interface, but not for this search. Let's get out of this. Let's go back. Let's go Discover. Let's try it again. All right, there we go. It was because I was in full screen mode, it didn't really register that I was in the search box. So now I am in the search box because I'm out of full screen mode, and now it can find me. So there I am. So I just typed in my name and I can bring up my profile. Now it's not just for finding people, it's also for finding anything. So if I'm looking for, not Terry White, but if I'm looking for pictures of flowers, then I can find pictures of flowers. And what's even cooler is I can find specific, not only search words, but I can find specific things, like for example, that have downloadable presets as part of the image, or only show me the images that I can play around with and remix. So it's great to be able to do this with local search. All right, last but not least, in Lightroom Desktop, you have the ability to go in, and if we go into the preferences, you now have more local storage options to control what's stored on your hard drive versus what's only in the cloud. So local storage options have improved and increased for people that are using Lightroom Desktop. Now we're going to switch gears We have only a few minutes left. Let's switch gears and let's pop over to my Samsung device here. I'm going to do this on a phone device. So I've got a Samsung S22. And of course, it's looking at the same Lightroom album. And notice that in this particular one, there's also video. So I can tap on that video. I can play that video. And this was a drone shot that I took over a lighthouse in Iceland. I'm a fan of lighthouses, and Iceland has some very unique lighthouses. Now, before, that was about it. That's all you could do in Lightroom was play the video. You couldn't really do anything else. But now we have the ability to go in and do editing. So I have my editing controls. So if I needed to adjust the exposure of that video, not that image, of the video, not just a frame, if I need to adjust the contrast, and now if I hit play, it's done it to the entire video, not just that one frame. And also if you have the ability to go in and trim the video, so if you didn't need all of it, you only needed like maybe the drone to fly around once, you could trim the beginning, trim the front, and then export out a new copy of the video with all the adjustments done to it. So trimming has now been made a part of Lightroom on Lightroom as well as it is on Lightroom Classic. All right, next up, let's go in and, oh, I can even flip it. So if I needed to face the other way, that can be useful. And also if you shot a video in the wrong orientation by accident, you can see that you can rotate it. So that's pretty cool too. So I can get out of trim. And last but not least, you also have presets. So there's a new category in the premium presets called Video Creative, and you can even apply these Video Creative presets. So now you might be asking, well, why are you doing this? Don't you guys have Adobe Premiere, like Premiere and Premiere Rush? Why are you doing this on Lightroom? Because Lightroom is where you're capturing everything for your story. You're capturing your photos and your videos. I'm trying to encourage people to capture more videos. So now imagine that I can make my photos and videos look the same, with the same color grading, the same presets, the same looks, the same effects. That's why. Okay, so Lightroom now editing video, trim, lights, colors, effects, and of course, presets. All right, let's pop out of this. Let's go back. And let's get into, let's go up here. Let's jump out of this album for a minute. And let's go in and tap on Discover. Let's go to our Discover. Now, we were just here a minute ago and we saw the search. But what I want to do is you see the little remix icon right there. It's kind of like a little swervy arrow. Well, what that means is that you can, if it has a remix icon, that means that you can edit it. And we introduced this on desktop first, but now we have the ability to do this on mobile as well. So for example, if I do flowers again, and I do that search, and I say, let's see, finding flowers here. Trying to see if any of these will pop up. There's one that I can remix. I tap remix, and it shows me the original edit, and then I can get into remix. So it's like I'm now, as if I've taken this photo with no editing done to it, and I can now do the things that I would do to it. And once I've done the things that I would do to it, I could then save this so that the person who's maybe learning about editing can see what another person would do to their photo. As a matter of fact, in my masterclass, one of my most popular topics is how I would edit your photo. So this is giving you the ability to do this as a Lightroom user. You can upload your own photos and you can tag them for remix so that others can remix them and see what they would look like. All right, so that's it for mobile. Let's pop over to, let's go back to our desktop here. Now we're going to switch over to Lightroom Classic on desktop. And one of the things that I want to show off is the batch masking. So I'm going to select multiple images here. I'm going to go into my develop, and I've got auto sync enabled. And now I'm going to go ahead and do a mask, and I'm going to do select sky. So it will select the sky, but it's selecting it for all four because I've got auto sync turned on. So now if I were to adjust the temperature, bring down the exposure, notice what it's doing it to all of them. So first it did a select sky. Now it's doing anything I do to all of the images. Bring down the exposure, I've adjusted the temperature, and now if I were to go look at each one has had that done to it based on what I did to the first one. So that's being able to batch your AI masking here in Lightroom Classic. All right, now the next one is kind of one I ran into when we introduced the new masking last year, and that was not having the ability to invert a mask group. So for example, if I go into this one and I do a mask and I do select subject, and this image the AI always misses one of the bags he's carrying. It gets the briefcase, but it doesn't get the bag. So what I would simply do is just add that in with a brush, and I've got auto mask turned on, and I can go ahead and brush that in. But the problem before, if I would do this, and then I would say, okay, great, I got him and I got the mask, or I got him in the bag. If I were to invert that now, it would only invert him, not the bag. So now we have the ability to invert the mask, the whole group. So when I say invert, notice it gets the background, not the bag. It's basically inverted the entire group. So for example, I could apply maybe a little dehaze to that background, kind of make it stand out a little bit more, not so washed out from the sun, and even drop the exposure down, and he and the bag stay consistent. All right, so that is inverting mask groups. All right, last but not least, let's go ahead and, while we're on this image, let's go ahead and grab a crop. So we hit the letter R for a crop tool in Lightroom Classic, and we've always had these different ways of looking at the crop, including rule of thirds, which we're looking at now. But if I press the letter O, that will switch to a new one, fifths. So people that need fifths instead of thirds, you can see 5 across and 5 down. People that need that. And if I keep hitting O, it'll take me through all the other ones, including triangle and diamond and all these other ones, until I get back to my rule of thirds, which is what I normally work in. So you have a new crop overlay called fifths. And let's talk about a couple more things that we have in the in Lightroom Classic. First and foremost, if you're doing exporting, most likely you are if you're a Lightroom Classic user. You do your edits, and at some point you're going to want to export them out. Well, now the exporting has GPU acceleration, so your exporting should go faster. And if you think about what export actually has to do, it has to take whatever original resolution and file format you had, raw file, PSD, TIFF, whatever, 48 megapixel, 24 megapixel, whatever it is, and not only convert that to a JPEG or whatever format you export to, but it also has to res it down. So now that whole process, when you're exporting out 50 or 100 or 1,000 images, is faster with the new GPU acceleration. All right, here's another one. I'm just kind of talking about things I don't really have a way to show you. But here's another one, and this is something I never really considered before, and that is that in Lightroom Classic, when you're making previews, like when you click on an image and it goes full screen, well, that's building in the background a one-to-one preview. Well, I never thought about it. If you delete that image after the one-to-one preview's been built, does the preview get deleted? And I guess the answer was not always, or not not every time. So now Lightroom is better at purging what we call stale previews. Previews of images that don't exist anymore, or previews of images that aren't the same anymore, like something's drastically changed with them, so that preview no longer exists. And that will save you not only drive space, but also just making Lightroom more nimble by not having the catalog, keeping track of all those previews all the time. All right, folks, that is my time. I covered everything I wanted to cover. Enjoy the June release. I think it's awesome. I think all the new updates and all across the board for video, Lightroom Desktop, Lightroom Classic are amazing. So cheers, everybody. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more content here at Adobe. Bye, everybody.